In at number 10, Deadpool. With the merger between Disney and Fox, there have been tons of rumors surrounding the members of the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and even the Merc with a Mouth coming over to the new Avengers. The most likely is Deadpool. He has a history with the Avengers, and the only thing that Disney executives have to work out is translating the R-rated star into the more family-friendly audience of the MCU. According to online rumors, Deadpool is set to appear in the end credits scene of Black Widow, spoiler alert, and therefore will be joining the new team of Avengers very soon. We are still waiting on Kevin Feige to confirm, but he did note that the movie is happening with a whole new lineup of Avengers, which is pretty exciting. And it's actually even more exciting news that we'll continue to speculate on throughout the rest of this list. In at number 9, Hulkling. Word on the street is that Marvel is casting for Teddy Altman aka Hulkling for an upcoming project that we can only hope is the new Avengers team. Based on a report from Geeks Worldwide, this young Avenger should be joining the cast of WandaVision at some point. The other reason why there is good speculation for Hulkling to be joining the new Avengers in regards to the MCU is the upcoming release of the new Avengers Empire comic. In the comic, Hulkling will lead as the star coming to end the beef between his people, the Kree, and the Skrulls. The fact that this comic book release date is lining up so perfectly with an intro to the MCU means we are hopeful that Teddy will finally get his shot. In at number 8, Songbird. Her real name is Melissa Gold. She was a troubled runaway from an alcoholic father and a mother that was locked in prison. Due to her needing to survive on the streets, Melissa developed a hard edge to her personality that she would later use to her advantage when becoming a professional wrestler, the Screaming Mimi. Her transition to the new Avengers was a bit of a bumpy road to say the least. Under the supervision of John Garrett, Songbird infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. as a double agent. When her cover was finally blown though, she admitted her betrayal and thus became a triple agent after siding with Bobby DaCosta. Still a good member to the new Avengers. In at number 7, Squirrel Girl. Her real name is Dorian Green, and whether you like it or not, she is a valued member of the new Avengers. Moving away from the MCU for a moment, Squirrel Girl undoubtedly has a big fan base and has proved her worth many times. She is a former member of the Great Lakes Avengers, and when Luke Cage and Jessica Jones needed a babysitter, they hired her. I mean, bit of a slap in the face considering all that she has done in the comic books, but hey, she's still considered to be a new Avenger team member. In at number 6, Enigma. Also known as Pod and now Pod 2, Jokinen was an ethnically Finnish Norwegian girl. Due to her proximity of the Pod system armor crash landing, she was bonded to the suit and remained in a cocoon that was later discovered by the Advanced Idea Mechanics, or AIM for short. At first she quickly defeated the Avengers, but soon she was captured by them before Bobby DaCosta took over AIM. Over time and after some successful missions, Pod would become Sunspot's bodyguard and member of the new Avengers. Dr. Tony Ho, whom Amanda mentioned on the first part, became increasingly fascinated with Pod and even started to fall in love with the person inside of that armor. How sweet.
Number 5, Daken. I mean, we should probably get Wolverine and the rest of the mutant crew in the MCU first, but as soon as they are in, this is one of the people I want immediately thereafter. Daken is the son of Wolverine, who actually currently goes by his given name of Akihiro in the comics. Daken was actually a cruel nickname that Akihiro initially just adopted as his own. Daken in Japanese basically translates to cur or mongrel in English, and was used in reference to the fact that Akihiro was mixed race. His mother was a Japanese woman, Itsu, who was murdered before she could give birth to him, and his father was Wolverine, who believed that their unborn child had also been killed along with his wife, and therefore did not know that he'd actually been stolen and survived following Itsu's death, which was pretty awkward later. Daken was raised to hate his father and would grow up to become a villain and specifically an enemy to Wolverine. Norman would recruit Daken to become his stand-in Wolverine for his Dark Avengers team, which I love.
Number 4, Ragnarok. We've already had one Thor replacement on this list, but luckily the Dark Avengers were having a buy one get one free sale and threw in an evil cyborg clone as a bonus. Eventually going under the apocalyptic Norse moniker of Ragnarok, this clone was originally made by Tony Stark based off a strand of hair that the billionaire stole after his first encounter with the Asgardian. During the events of Civil War, Tony unleashed this mad clone as a deterrent against the anti-registration side of the conflict, and received a ton of backlash when the clone wound up being more powerful than intended and eventually had to be destroyed by the god Hercules. Nevertheless, cyborg clones just don't die, and Ragnarok was given his new codename as a member of the Dark Avengers and lending muscle to Norman Osborn's new reign of terror. Could you imagine seeing this guy in the MCU? I'm sure Chris Hemsworth is down for playing double the roles, right?
Number 3, Moonstone. Moonstone is someone I've wanted for a while in the MCU. She's not only the Dark Avengers stand-in for Carol Danvers as their Ms. Marvel, but has also been a member of the Thunderbolts as well. So it seems doubly likely that we'll get her eventually. Norman chose Carla Sofin to become his Ms. Marvel after Carol refused to join Osborn's team. Carla also would become an antagonist to Carol herself, as well as having a history with the Marvel name prior to that. I really am eager to see Captain Marvel and Moonstone face off in the MCU, so I'm really hoping that Carla does end up joining our new darker hero team that seems to be slowly forming. I can't wait.
Number 2. Mac Gargan. Spider-Man has had more than his fair share of animal-themed villains over the years, but few have had as many twists and turns in their persona as Mac Gargan, most commonly known as the Scorpion. Originally hired as a private investigator by J. Jonah Jameson to learn more about our beloved Wallcrawler, Gargan's rivalry with the Webhead ascended into supervillainry when he was paid $10,000 to undergo a procedure, giving him all the proportional strength of, you guessed it, a scorpion. But that's far from the only name Gargan has gone under, as for a time he was also the host of the Venom symbiote, appearing much larger and more violent than the villain ever had before. This insane level of violence made it all the more worrying when Norman Osborn shrank down Gargan's symbiote so that he could more easily fit in as the Dark Avengers version of the beloved Spider-Man. Now, technically Mac Gargan has already appeared in Spider-Man Homecoming without any superpowers yet, but come on Marvel Studios, we need to see Nacho from Better Call Saul wearing a symbiote suit pronto.
Number 1. Iron Patriot. Yep, you maybe guessed it. Iron Patriot is probably one of my favorite Dark Avengers around and is also our number 1 spot. He also happens to be both the leader of the team and of Hammer, the organization behind the Dark Avengers. That's right, Iron Patriot is none other than Norman Osborn, who stands in as a version of the Avengers' Iron Man. Of course, he is much more sinister and obsessive than any version of Tony could ever be. And sadly, he also kind of ruined the Iron Patriot name. Poor Rhodey. Norman as Iron Patriot is not only a team member, but is also the one who ultimately decides who he wants on his team, recruiting other villains and turning them into alternate versions of superheroes. I also just selfishly want Norman Osborn in the MCU for Spider-Man because he's such a great villain overall for Spidey, but then again, he also has proven himself as a great villain just overall in the comics, so to see him as like a big bad would also be pretty cool.
And at number 10, the Founders. The West Coast Avengers debuted in their own self-titled comic, but the initiative to create a team located on the other side of the country was spearheaded in the Avengers, from a member of the team who wasn't even a part of the initial lineup, Vision. The android came up with the idea after the Avengers found themselves preoccupied and overwhelmed by the events of Secret Wars, with most of their heavy hitters tied up in other matters. Now Vision stayed with the Avengers on the East Coast, and Hawkeye was named the chair of the WCA, and became a founding member, which led the team in over 102 issues. Up next, number 9, past members. So aside from Hawkeye, who else has been on the team? The founding members were Hawkeye, Mockingbird, War Machine, who everyone initially thought was Iron Man, funny enough, Wonder Man, and Tigra. Now from there, Hawkeye recruited many other additional characters over the years, including Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, the real one this time, The Thing, Hank Pym, specifically as a scientific consultant, Moon Knight, Firebird, the Wasp, and of course, Vision, with that group of heroes popping up in the second volume of the series at varying points in time. Human Torch, Quicksilver, Machine Man, Living Lightning, Spider-Woman, and Darkhawk would all have stints with the team too, primarily after 1989. A whole other team of WCA members would pop up during the Fresh Start initiative at Marvel, but we'll get to them a bit later on. And at number 8, the name change. The West Coast Avengers haven't always been referred to as such. Now back in 1984, when the team was introduced, there was a bit of a backlash amongst fans concerning a second Avengers team. It seemed kinda gimmicky. Oh, if those fans could see contemporary comics now. Now after several years leading into the 1990s, the WCA weren't the only Avengers team kicking around. So to ensure that fans and readers would not get confused, Marvel decided that the best thing to do was to change all of their Avengers titles, so that they could be found alphabetically next to each other at comic book stores. In other words, the team names were altered so that the word Avengers was the first word in their title. Now the West Coast Avengers were changed to the Avengers West Coast, a title which was eventually cancelled in 1994. And at number 7, the suicide attempt. The West Coast Avengers history is filled with a whole lot of interpersonal drama, just like the Avengers is. Perhaps one of the most intense story arcs though to have appeared in the West Coast Avengers is when Hank Pym joined the team as a scientific consultant after his mental health took a turn for the worse when he was a part of the Avengers. Now between issues 17 and 24 of the West Coast Avengers Volume 1, Hank is suicidal, and actually writes suicide letters, including ones to Tony and Tigra. Meanwhile, while Hank is having a personal crisis, the WCA are off fighting desert-inspired supervillains that are wacky as hell. Overall, that story arc just had a lot of strange things going on. Not that suicide is strange, but everything else surrounding the West Coast Avengers at the time was pretty whack. Hank, back at the base, talks to his ex-wife Janet, aka the Wasp, who had divorced him after the infamous wife-beating incident, and essentially says goodbye to her, giving her some really bad vibes about what's going on with him. Then Hank gets a gun, puts it to his head, but before he can shoot, he's interrupted by Firebird, who talks to him into appreciating his God-given gifts. He then gets a little manic, and goes through a strange confidence boost, calling himself Dr. Pym as his superhero alias, and then freaks out momentarily when he thinks Firebird is a nun. She reassures him that she isn't, and then they make out. Overall, not the best way to approach mental health issues, as we're very much aware. He challenges Moon Knight to a fight, then chickens out, and then goes off to help save the WCA, who are trapped in the past. It's a whole roller coaster of emotion for Hank. And at number 6, Ultimate Marvel. Of course the West Coast Avengers have an alternate version of themselves. This specific alternate can be found in the Ultimates Marvel universe. They are a secret team created by S.H.I.E.L.D. called the West Coast Ultimates that consisted of Vision, Quake, Wonder Man, Black Knight, and Tigra. And they've been through some pretty wild stuff. For starters, they were sent out to find Osama bin Laden, but failed when Wonder Man hulked out, and then the team had to fight him to settle him down. Now seeing this, Nick Fury decided that it would be best to put them all in stasis tubes, holding them until they were needed. Flash forward to the United We Stand storyline, in which the Children of Tomorrow, aka Reed Richards' fanatical cult, kills the US president and both houses of Congress, igniting a civil war. The state of California wanted to break apart and become its own country, but Steve Rogers, who had been elected president, denied them of it. So the state's governor decided to take the group out of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s custody and unleash them against the Ultimates, Earth 1610's version of the Avengers.
Number 5. Devil Dinosaur. Okay, look, he ain't on the team at all really, but he did kind of help them unintentionally, and I also really want to talk about this dino since I haven't before, so Devil Dinosaur. He's basically just a big, red, intelligent T-Rex from another universe. Not intelligent enough to talk or anything, but he understands the situations he's in, can understand human language, and even has some telepathic connection with certain characters. As for the Savage Avengers, in Volume 2, Issue 2, the Savage heroes have been sent back in time to the Hyborian era, and they end up fighting Devil Dinosaur in a coliseum. That is, until they kind of not really work together to bust out of there. He doesn't have many powers other than super intelligence and strength, but he is a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which I can imagine is very helpful. Number 4. Wolverine. This mutant needs almost no introduction, being one of the most recognizable characters in Marvel's lineup. James Logan Howlett is a long-lived Canadian mutant with the rage of a beast and the soul of a samurai. His mysterious past is filled with blood, war, and betrayal, creating one of the greatest characters Marvel has ever made. If you don't already know his powers, Wolverine has an accelerated healing factor, keenly enhanced senses, and bone claws in each hand, which were improved upon when his whole skeleton, including the claws, were coated in adamantium, one of the hardest metals on Earth. This rage-filled samurai mutant Canadian joined up with the Savage Avengers in 2020 to help fight against Cool and Gath, and he's honestly a great addition to every team he joins. So let's hear some love for Wolverine! Yeah! Woo! Okay. Moving on. Number 3. The Venom symbiote. I say specifically the symbiote because at this time Eddie Brock and Venom were having a bit of a rough period and had separated from each other for the time being. At least that's what I've gathered from reading. Either way, alerted to the suffering of another member of his species at the hands of Cool and Gath, the Venom symbiote arrived where the future Savage Avengers were at to help Logan, the Punisher, Elektra, and Dr. Voodoo fight the eldritch god Cool and Gath was trying to summon. Exposure to the god's cosmic radiation caused the Venom symbiote to take on the form of a massive dragon, letting it hold its own against the god in combat. The symbiote would do its best to help in the fight, saving the other members of its species in the process. But he's Venom! We all know how cool he is. I don't really have to explain this to you. Nope. Number 2. Dagger. When her boyfriend Rob left for college, Tandy Bowen, a 16-year-old girl who grew up in Shaker Heights, Ohio, left home on a bus for New York City. While wandering the streets, a man tried to mug her, but she was rescued by Tyrone Johnson, a fellow runaway teen. She bought Tyrone food and the two grew to care about each other. But when a guy named Simon Marshall rounded up a bunch of the city's teen runaways offering them food and shelter, Tandy agreed to go, being kind of naive. And Tyrone went with her because he wanted to protect Tandy, which was good good, because Tyrone was right to be suspicious. The runaway teens were knocked unconscious by Marshall's men and injected with an experimental substance. The two were the only teens who survived and soon developed powers. For Tandy, she can generate a form of living light, which is actually life force that she uses most commonly in the form of psionic light daggers, which travel wherever she wills them and which drain living beings of life force. Her light daggers also have the capacity to cure certain persons of substance addictions, which is an interesting side effect. Tandy can also project her light into Cloak's dimension to feed his quote-unquote hunger. She is unharmed when traveling through his dimension and can pass this protection to others, which leads me the next spot. Number 1. Cloak. Tyrone Johnson is the dark half of the vigilante duo known as Cloak and Dagger. After a substance-related experiment awakened his powers, he became a living personification of darkness. Tyrone grew up in South Boston and had a really bad stuttering condition, which inadvertently caused him to be unable to save his friend's life. Tyrone ran away from the home because of the guilt of that, and he ended up in New York City's ports, desperate for food and searching for someone to rob. Instead, he found Tandy Bowen, another runaway, and ironically prevented her from being robbed. They eventually were subjected to the experimental substance that caused them to gain their powers. For Cloak, he has the ability to manipulate dark force energy and access the dimension that it comes from, which he uses to do things like creating localized fields of impenetrable darkness, creating mobile solid tendrils of darkness, hiding in shadows, becoming intangible, pulling people into the dark force dimension, trapping them there, and teleporting himself and others by taking an interdimensional shortcut through the Dark Force dimension. Clearly, very useful.
Number 10. Dark Avengers. The Dark Avengers were first introduced in their own comic book series in Dark Avengers issue number 1. Not everyone is a fan of them, because while they're kind of Avengers, they're also kind of go against a lot of the things that the original team stood for. The Dark Avengers are led by Norman Osborn, who gets to make his own organization, Hammer, to safeguard the world's safety following the crumbling of S.H.I.E.L.D. and after his victory against the Skrull Queen, whose death was brought about by Osborn and was also televised, making him a worldwide hero in the eyes of many, despite the fact that, yeah, he was still definitely a villain. Still, although this team was comprised of villains, they did aim to do good things, just in their own way. In truth, they became more a team of anti-heroes than anything, with just a dash of villainous escapades organized by their leader, Osborn, who at this point went by Iron Patriot. Sort of like the Iron Man of this Dark Avengers crew. Number 9. Avengers Academy. Avengers Academy was a series that replaced the Avengers The Initiative series. As that series ended, this one began. The Avengers Academy team was a group of superpowered youths who were selected to be trained as new Avengers. Although originally the teens thought that they had been selected due to the promise that they showed, it was later revealed that they had been selected because of the great risk that they would ultimately become villains. In fact, 6 of the teens were actually working for Norman Osborn during the Dark Avengers Hammer Dark Reign days, and likely could have ended up being trained by him to become Dark Avengers, should that whole situation have continued to play out. However, when the Avengers found out about them, they instead decided to create the Avengers Academy in an attempt to repurpose and redeem those youths, so basically took them in themselves. Hank Pym acted as the headmaster of this academy, while Tigra, Justice, Quicksilver, and Speedball took on roles as teachers. Number 8. Secret Avengers. This team operated for 3 years in the comics. It was led by Commander Steve Rogers and Sharon Carter. After the dissolution of Hammer and the Dark Avengers, Steve was now left to decide what should come after. Instead of reforming S.H.I.E.L.D. or the Avengers, he decided to secure global safety through the use of various smaller Avengers teams. Secret Avengers was one of those teams that he himself led and was a black ops unit used for covertly dealing with the problems that Osborn, Hammer, and the Dark Avengers had left behind and created during their reign. Members included Black Widow, Ant-Man, Beast, Moon Knight, War Machine, Nova, and a Valkyrie named Brunhilde. They were eventually disbanded by Hawkeye following their fight against the Descendants. But man, was it a fun and weird run. Seriously, if you haven't checked out Secret Avengers, you should maybe do it. It's pretty strange. I kinda love it. Number 7. Mighty Avengers. Granted, there is more than one Mighty Avengers team, but for the purpose of this list, we're talking about Luke Cage's Mighty Avengers. This team of Avengers formed to look after the Earth after the main Avengers team was forced to roll out when the Builders threatened the entire universe. Yeah, that was a thing. Remember that? During the Avengers' absence, Thanos returned to Earth and the Mighty Avengers stepped in to protect their people and their planet. The team was led by Luke Luke Cage and included such heroes as Spectrum, White Tiger, and Blue Marvel, as well as Superior Spider-Man, who at one point attempted to overtake leadership of the team, fighting Luke Cage for it. Number 6. AIM. I know what you're thinking, AIM? Wait, but what? AIM was originally the villainous organization of genius-level scientists, also known as Advanced Idea Mechanics, who aimed, get it, aimed, to overthrow the government and rule the world using technological advancements. So what are you talking about, Amanda? How can they be an Avengers team? Well, this organization eventually was taken over by mutant and hero Sunspot, Roberto da Costa. Sunspot renamed the organization Avengers Idea Mechanics and set out to reclaim and reform it. He used the organization for good, filling it with more noble, brilliant minds who developed tech to help with Sunspot's new Avengers rescue missions. Roberto basically merged his new Avengers team with AIM to create this new technologically advanced Avengers team. Previously, that new Avengers team was actually known as the Multiversal Avengers, and originally they were all about discovering the reason behind the gradual disintegration of the multiverse.
Number 5. Magic. Ileana Rasputina is a mutant sorceress who rules the demonic realm known as Limbo. She was taken to Limbo by Belasco, and in the few seconds that passed on Earth, Ileana aged years in Limbo. Time she spent mastering different dark arts. Magic also exhibited the mutant ability to mentally control stepping discs that are connected to Limbo and allow her and others to teleport across interstellar distances, space, and time. She joined the New Mutants and she has gone on to eventually join the ranks of the X-Men, and has been mentored by Doctor Strange, advancing her magical abilities even further, which is quite a statement as she is the Sorceress Supreme in her Limbo dimension, having been taught black magic by Belasco and white magic from an alternate Aurora Monroe. And she was among those who were considered for becoming the new Sorcerer Supreme of Earth 616. Number 4. Dr. Voodoo. Jericho Drum is the master practitioner of voodoo, white magic, according to the Book of Vishanti, and he has been stated as one of the most powerful mystic practitioners on the planet. Which is why it makes sense that he was the one to actually become the new Sorcerer Supreme for a while in Doctor Strange's place after the Eye of Agamotto deemed that he possesses a pure heart and a clean soul. Now his main magical ability allows him to interact with spirits for a number of different effects. He can summon skeletons, the spirits of the dead, and manipulate zombies with his necromancy. He can manipulate biological forces like animals and trees, as well as heal others, and he has even removed Frank Castle's mouth one time, which was pretty freaky. He has a degree of pyrokinesis, can control a voodoo smoke/mist, and can manipulate and control people's souls. Now that is all on top of the normal mystical abilities he possesses through spells that were increased in potential when he was trained by Doctor Strange and when he became Sorcerer Supreme. Number 3. Dr. Doom. Victor Von Doom has been a staple villain in the worlds of Marvel Comics since 1962. But there is more to this incredibly powerful, super intelligent, and charismatic Latvian monarch. He has helped the forces of good on several occasions, even if it was for selfish ends, and has recently reformed and even become a hero. He held the power cosmic and the power of the Beyonder twice, becoming God King of Battleworld the second time. He is an incredibly capable character. Dr. Victor Von Doom was introduced to magic by his mother, but he expanded his knowledge by going through time and training with characters like Morgana Le Fay. He has proved capable of mystical blasts, force fields, ensnaring, banishing, and portals, summoning entities and demonic creatures, casting and reversing spells, teleportation, dimensional travel, healing of himself and others, time travel, power absorption, elemental manipulation, telekinesis, as well as power nullification. He also honed psionic abilities such as mind transference, hypnotism, and technopathy. He has been considered for the role of Sorcerer Supreme and is just one of the best villains Marvel has ever created. Number 2. Doctor Strange. Dr. Stephen Strange. His magical feats are almost unmatched by any other. He is among the most adept magic user in the multiverse and has shown it many times. When he first came on the scene, and for a long while, he was so insanely powerful that he was capable of doing pretty much anything he wanted. It got to the point that Marvel even decided to depower him. He has passed a test in which he accepted death, which meant he now no longer ages and can only be de-lifed by external means, meaning he is essentially immortal. His energy blasts are capable of destroying moons and planets. You remember when I listed all the things Dr. Doom can do? Well, Strange can do all of them, probably better, and more. He has mastered the words of the Black Priest, allowing him to distort reality. He frequently calls on the divine empowerment and extra-dimensional energy of mystical and non-mystical beings in multiple dimensions to power his spells, and he can use black magic like taking the power of another entity by force of will. But he has stopped using that kind of magic, so it's whatever. He is the defender of reality and has put together so many different crazy teams, including this one. Number 1. Kang the Conqueror. Nathaniel Richards was born on the 30th century Earth of Reality 6311, where humanity never went into the Dark Ages. In this reality, after centuries of technological advancement and war, peace was finally brought to the Earth by a time traveler from Earth 616, also named Nathaniel Richards, known as the legendary Benefactor. Now, the Nathaniel Richards born to the 6311 reality is said to be a descendant of the Benefactor through Reed Richards, although he may be descended from Dr. Doom. So already we're off to a confusing start, and that's before we even get into the seemingly endless versions of him by different names and from different realities that are littered throughout Marvel Comics and appear in the 616 reality. Basically, after landing in the 40th century, Nathaniel reinvented himself as Kang the Conqueror, conquering the Earth, then the galaxy, and then setting his sight on other times and realities. Apart from his advanced physiology and exceptional mind, Kang's battle armor is produced from a rare synthetic alloy from the 40th century and responds to his subconscious thoughts. It grants him abilities including enhanced strength, durability withstanding even a nuclear strike at point-blank range, anti-gravity, video communication, time travel, concussive bolts, summoning any number of weapons which are transported to him through the time stream instantly, electric shocks, hover pads, survival kits, and body transference. He is an Avengers level threat and easily takes any of the top spots on this list.
Number 10. Justice. Also known as Vance Astrovic, he has latent mutant telekinesis powers that were activated when he encountered his future self, Major Victory of the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Major also traveled back in time and across realities to prevent himself from ever acquiring powers, but instead just activated them early and created an alternate timeline. Man, talk about being your own worst enemy. He accidentally killed his father and went to prison, and during this time learned to respect the law, even helping the guards during an uprising. When he was released, he had a new outlook on life and named himself Justice, becoming a hero. He has been a member of the New Warriors and later the Avengers, discovering a new way to defeat Ultron and helping them defeat him. His main power is his telekinesis, although he was once a fighter in the UCWF, Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation, where he was known as Manglin' John Mahoney. Hey guys, if you like these videos and you want to see more, be sure to take a second and hit that like button. Number 9. Black Knight. Dane Whitman is actually the third character to bear the Black Knight name, and he first appeared in The Avengers number 47 in 1967. Nephew to the original Black Knight, he inherited a mystical sword that carried a curse and fought to restore honor to the Black Knight name. He uses a winged horse named Aragorn as his mount, and as an Avenger, helped the team take on Kang the Conqueror. An excellent swordsman with magic senses, he has been a member of many other teams, including the Heroes for Hire and the Ultra Force. He had a 4-issue miniseries in 1990 and was the main character of his own series that was cancelled after a short time. If Black Knight is an Avenger that you have heard of, then good news for you, he'll be appearing in the upcoming Marvel film Eternals in 2021, played by Kit Harington. If you've seen Game of Thrones, then I'm sure you'll agree he's a great choice. Can't wait to see Jon Snow in the MCU. Number 8. Two Gun Kid. In 1948, Marvel released their first ever Western comic book, Two Gun Kid. An expert gunslinger wrongly accused of murder, he spends his life on the run, but does good everywhere he goes. Just him, his 2 6 guns, and his trusty guitar. Marvel had great success with this and went on to create a whole slew of Western-themed comics, but I'll bet the kid never thought he would one day be riding alongside men in tights as a member of the Avengers. The kid met the Avengers when they went up against the time-traveling villain Kang in 1870 and got along really well with Hawkeye, so he just joins up and helps them take on Kang. Afterwards, he returns to the 20th century with the Avengers. In the modern era, he works alongside She-Hulk, hoping to become her colleague since she works at a law firm, but quickly realizes he'll never be able to catch up on all the new laws and instead becomes a bounty hunter. He rides around in an awesome jet cycle named Lightning, which he uses to fly around the city. Number 7. Hellcat. Real name Patricia Walker. You might recognize her from Marvel's Netflix shows where she's guest starred, but did you know she was also once an Avenger? Hellcat joined up with the Avengers in 1976, but actually had her own teen romantic comedy series before this called Miss America Magazine in 1944. Similar to Two Gun Kid, this is a popular character that sort of slowly evolved into a superhero. She appears again in 1977 in The Defenders, where she meets the son of Satan, and the two later become married, a husband and wife occult investigation team. She is a well-trained martial artist and gymnast, with wrist-mounted claws and grappling hooks. Surprisingly, she has appeared in 5 different Marvel video games, including LEGO Avengers. Number 6. Moondragon. Heather Douglas was a young girl driving through the desert with her parents when Thanos' spaceship landed on Earth. Not wanting witnesses, he blew up their car, but Heather was thrown from the vehicle and survived. Her father's corpse is later reanimated to create Drax the Destroyer. Thanos' father, Mentor, found her and took her to his homeworld Titan, where she studied the Titan's ways and unlocked her latent psychic potential. However, she becomes influenced by the Dragon of the Moon, and believing she has successfully resisted its influence, takes on the name Moondragon. She was present when the Avengers confronted Korvac, using her powers to see into his mind while they fought. She later joins the Defenders alongside Valkyrie, and discovers she's still being influenced by the Dragon of the Moon. She manages to resist it for real this time, but as they are separated, she begins to die from mutated spores, and the dragon appears again, offering to save her life if she agrees to be its host. She does agree, and then, as an evil dragon, fights against the Defenders until the 4 of them sacrifice themselves to kill both her and the dragon.
Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who gets his powers from his Iron Man made armor. Donning this armor, he goes by the mantle of War Machine typically, but has also been known to wear the Iron Patriot armor and also use that moniker as well. In fact, during his time on the Secret Avengers team, Rhodey's War Machine armor received an upgrade that allowed him to phase and appear invisible, but he would actually give up the War Machine mantle to later become Iron Man in secret, and then end up later leaving the Secret Avengers team when he decided to take up the Iron Patriot armor and that name. Rhodey might get his powers from his suit, but the skills and knowledge which he uses to pilot them is all his own. So even without his armor, he's pretty powerful. I mean, he's a guy, but he's still a powerful guy. Also, he has lots of suits, so he also powerful in his suits of armor. Number 4. Black Widow. Black Widow makes for a great addition to Captain America's Secret Avengers team that is formed following the end of Norman Osborn's Dark Reign. This team was one that Captain America brought together to basically serve as his Black Ops team. Their main mission was to help clean up all the messes that Norman Osborn had left about during his time ruling Hammer and the Dark Avengers. Considering that Natasha is a highly skilled and trained assassin who also has extensively reflected on the moral dilemma that comes attached to things like assassinating people and Black Ops, she makes a great fit. She is extremely experienced with walking that fine line between getting less savory jobs done, but also making sure you don't lose yourself and that you only do as much as is really necessary. Not only is she highly trained and skilled, but it's also implied that she technically has superpowers after being exposed to a Russian variation of the super soldier serum during her time in the Red Room. It's how she can stay so youthful and she looks so young forever. That Russian super soldier serum. Making sense of how is Black Widow even still alive and what is going on. Number 3. Valkyrie. Brunhilde is Valkyrie, or at least she was Valkyrie. Now there's another Valkyrie, and actually there's kind of like other Valkyries, multiple Valkyries, but I digress. Brunhilde is also Valkyrie in the comics. She ended up joining the Secret Avengers after her apparent death during the Fear Itself event. As a character, she dies quite a bit to be honest, but she usually gets to return, which is awesome. As an Asgardian, Brunhilde has powers that come from just being of Asgard. She has superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, has slowed aging and an increased lifespan, and of course she can self-heal, although as I said, that doesn't always save her from dying. which happens. Number 2, Captain America. Probably one of the most important members of the Secret Avengers team at almost all times is Captain America. Captain America was the founder of the team the first time around and formed it to help fight back against Iron Man and the Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. It was called Secret Avengers because of the fact that the team had to be kept secret. Otherwise, they would have been taken away and imprisoned due to the SRA or the SHRA. I don't know if superhuman, if those are their own letters or not. Captain America is a super soldier, a strong and motivational leader who also has super strength, speed, agility, speed. I said speed twice, but he's really speedy, I guess, and endurance, all thanks to him being exposed to the super soldier serum years ago in World War II. So he's not just super valuable as a leader, but he's also super powerful in general. Also, he's Captain freaking America. That's just having that name. I feel like if you're Captain America already, you get some kind of power level just from people being like, oh, it's Captain America. Number 1, Nova. Nova is Richard Rider. He basically came on to act as a Secret Avengers powerhouse when Captain America originally banded this team together after Hammer was disbanded, which I think means he gets our top spot by default. Also, Nova is just insanely powerful due to him being the host of the Nova Force. He only ended up sticking around for the first arc of the first Secret Avengers series volume, as he had to go do some cosmic stuff and he was pulled away, but he was still a member for a time, so we can still count him. Nova is insanely strong, fast, durable, can self-heal, can fly, also having the ability to fly through space, and he's super smart, as he has access to the Xandarian world mind, basically giving him access to all the knowledge of Xandar. So yeah, he's got it all, baby. He's got the strength, he's got the wits, he's got that sweet look in his awesome suit with his awesome helmet. He's got it all. Except he doesn't have the time to be on the Secret Avengers for too long. That's what he doesn't have. He lacks time.
Number 10, Bullseye. What do you do when you have a supervillain whose power is being able to hit practically any target? Well, you have him replace a superhero who can pretty much do the same. Bullseye, a mysterious assassin who we still don't even know the full name of beyond Lester Somebody, is most well known for frequently clashing with Daredevil and being under the employ of Kingpin. However, after using his sociopathic talents during the Skrull invasion and aiding the Thunderbolts, Bullseye was given the position of being a replacement Hawkeye, a position he kept threatening to lose as his murder sprees began drawing more and more attention to the villainous side of Osborn's Avengers team. Who knows, maybe we'll get a season 2 of the Disney Plus Hawkeye show and get to see an evil Hawkeye on screen after all.
Number 9, Toxie. Toxie is one of the worst there is out there. She is June Covington, a post-grad who was working at NYU and became obsessed with perfecting the human genetic code. She succeeded in doing so and aimed to use her research to fix a man who she found to be perfect except for a birth defect in his arm. In issue number 1 of Osborn, we learned that the man, Edward Wynn, would however refuse her help and attempt to have her imprisoned for her extreme research methods and basically eugenics-focused science. But she'd get back at him later on. Claiming to have changed her ways, she lured him to her lab, paralyzed him, and then left him trapped there to rot. Toxie ends up joining the Dark Avengers team following Norman Osborn's escape from the raft. She becomes the new Scarlet Witch of his team and also ends up romantically involved with Norman, despite initially showing disinterest in him the first time they met when she was drumming up money to fund her research.
Number 8, Ares. Tell me if you've heard this one before. The gods of one of mankind's most well-spread mythologies are actually advanced beings from their own unique pocket dimension, so powerful and advanced compared to the people of Earth that we can only qualify them as godlike. Well, this is the explanation given in the Marvel Universe for both the Greek and Norse gods, and perhaps that's why Norman Osborn was able to use them so interchangeably when searching for a replacement Thor. While the Greek god of war Ares had been on good terms with the Avengers before Osborn was placed in charge, he was one of the few superpowered beings who saw nothing wrong with the change in leadership and would go on to lead the Dark Avengers assault on Asgard. Asgard may be gone in the MCU already, but that doesn't mean I'm still not itching to see Thor and Loki take on another Pantheon's god. Bring it on, Marvel.
Number 7. Aya Peak. Aya Peak is one of the alternate darker versions of Spider-Man. Overall, a pretty deadly and cool character inspired by an actual worshipped and feared deity of the Mochi civilization, which flourished in northern Peru from the 1st to 8th century CE. Pretty neat stuff. Aya Peak ended up joining Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers team that was assembled after he escaped the raft. I think he'd be a cool character to have for his overall appearance. He has like snakes for hair, fangs, and a spider-like body with multiple limbs, but he'd also just be cool to act as an anti-Spider-Man, being literally a man, or well, god really, who is part spider but is known for his more cruel and violent approach. His name is really Aya Peak the Decapitator, so yeah. Also, what's up with Dark Avengers and gods? Apparently that's a thing.
Number 6. Scar. You might have heard that the Hulk briefly lived as a gladiator on the distant world of Sakaar, but did you know that in the comics he wound up actually having a son from this adventure? The offspring of the Hulk and Kyera the Old Strong, Scar's mother died so that he might live during the destruction of his planet, and eventually made his way back to Earth following in his father's footsteps. While initially seen as a threat by many of the world's heroes, Scar wound up being one of the few Dark Avengers to redeem himself. He was secretly a double agent for Steve Rogers all along, right under Norman Osborn's nose. The Hulk's always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and seeing him deal with father and son issues would bring a whole lot of drama to everyone's favorite universe, and I personally can't wait.
Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed. But the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points. That's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark. That's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power, not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how we'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him.
Number 10. Daredevil. When Matt Murdock guilted himself into giving up Daredevil, Elektra started keeping a watchful eye over him. She starts acting as a vigilante in Hell's Kitchen to prove to Matt that she can fight without causing casualties and prove that she can train him to be the man he was meant to be. Eventually, when Matt gives himself up as Daredevil over to the police, Elektra takes over the mantle. Her first run-in with Savage Avengers was before this though. Elektra was undercover in the Hand when she followed them to the Savage Land. There, they were working with Sorcerer Kulin Gath to collect warriors to sacrifice to a primordial god. In their second adventure, Elektra is operating as Daredevil and goes into the past with this new team of Savage Avengers in a conflict with Deathlock. I'm really liking her as Daredevil so far. Her abilities and training as an assassin make her an impressive hero to say the least. Number 9. Black Widow. A former KGB agent, Natasha Alyanova Romanova, better known as Natasha Romanoff, which is way easier to say, or Black Widow, was trained by the top secret Soviet brainwashing and training program, the Red Room, to become the ultimate super spy. She defected from the Soviet Union to the US to join S.H.I.E.L.D. While in the Red Room, she was bio and psychotechnologically enhanced, giving her an unusually long lifespan and prolonged, youthful appearance. In the past, she was given versions of the super soldier serum, so she possesses peak level physiology, making her as strong, agile, fast, and durable as a female human can possibly be without being classified as superhuman. This also extends to her senses and immune system, which are similarly heightened to peak human levels. Black Widow is one of the top espionage operatives in the world, being one of the best information gatherers in the Marvel Universe. She's fluent in many different languages and is an expert computer programmer and hacker. She's an accomplished battle strategist and field commander and has been the leader of the Avengers and even S.H.I.E.L.D. on one occasion. So her addition to the Savage Avengers team should never be rejected. Number 8. It's Punisher. When US Marine veteran Frank Castle's family was dispatched for witnessing a mob hit, Frank vowed to avenge their deaths and become a one-man army in his personal war against crime. He became the vigilante known as the Punisher. He's quite impressive for a regular dude. Castle is in peak physical condition and is able to access and adapt to just about any situation and turn it to his advantage, using only his skills and killer instinct. He has a very high threshold for pain, able to undergo surgery without any kind of anesthesia, and he can take multiple shots and stab wounds and continue fighting. He can even take hits from superheroes and villains with superhuman strength and just keep on going. The Punisher's reflexes are also probably some of the best of any human, able to dodge Captain America's shield and take out speedsters. Castle is also an excellent military tactician and strategist, able to create effective plans on the spot, and has repeatedly outwitted S.H.I.E.L.D., Hammer, and even the Avengers. He is a reconnaissance and survival expert, armorer and gunsmith, and a master martial artist and hand-to-hand combatant, while also being skilled at just about every type of firearm known to man. Frank was lured to the Savage Land where he joined with other heroes to become the Savage Avengers, when hand ninjas exhumed the body of his wife and kids. The ninjas were working for Kulin Gath, who was collecting warriors to use their blood in a ritual to raise an ancient god, as we have already said. Maybe you should have left Frank out of it though. I don't know. Number 7. Conan. Conan the Barbarian was born on a carnage-strewn battlefield in the hills of the westernmost region of Chimeria. Members of his tribe encircled Fiala, his mother, to protect her while she was giving birth to Conan. The fact that he was born on a battlefield was considered amongst the Chimerians, and by me, to be an omen that Conan would grow up to be a great warrior one day. And we weren't wrong. He was one of the most accomplished swordsmen of the Hyborian Age, and is often listed alongside King Arthur, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Zorro as one of the greatest fictional sword fighters in history, which is a really cool thing to put on a resume. Conan has unusual strength, agility, and speed for just a human guy. He has lifted immense objects or enemies, even breaking the neck of a raging bull when he was still relatively young. Conan usually relies upon his lightning-fast reflexes in combat situations, and they very rarely have failed him. Through years of dealing with sorcerers, magicians, and witches, he has even developed a moderate level of resistance to magic and mind control spells, which definitely comes in handy in the first volume of Savage Avengers. While primarily known as a wandering sellsword, Conan progressively became a master tactician, leading entire armies into battle, and eventually Conan even became king of Aquilonia. Number 6. Black Knight. Born and raised in Gloucester, Massachusetts, Dane Whitman attended university, eventually obtaining a master's degree in physics, and that's not his superpower. The descendant of a long line of heroes who took up the mantle of the mysterious Black Knight, Whitman assumed the role after his uncle Nathan Garrett, who had taken up the name as a villain, perished in a battle with Iron Man. Dane became a hero, wielding the Power Lance. He has also wielded several swords, including the Ebony Blade, a powerful but cursed weapon forged from a meteorite which is capable of cutting through almost any substance, and he's even wielded Excalibur. While holding the Ebony Blade though, Black Knight is unable to be killed, even if he loses his head or something like that. Whitman also possesses the Sword of Light and Shield of Night, bestowed upon him by the Lady of the Lake. Dane Whitman has been a member of the Avengers and leader of Ultra Force, and is now the current king of Weird World, but that hasn't stopped him from his savage avenging.
In at number 5, Power Man. His real name is Victor Alvarez, and he was born and raised in the brutal world of Hell's Kitchen, New York City. As a child, Victor's father was a criminal and therefore sent to Seagate Prison as a result, so he didn't exactly have great role models per se, other than his mother that raised him. After the Mighty Avengers were shut down, Power Man along with White Tiger followed each other to join the newly rebranded AIM team, which would in part become the New Avengers. Victor would fight side by side with this team for many adventures, but ultimately he felt that he was neglecting his home neighborhood for far too long. So we may not see much of Victor Alvarez in terms of MCU, but he definitely had a great stint with the New Avengers, and maybe he'll come back, who knows. Just speculation. In at number 4, Wiccan. Billy Kaplan had an interaction with the Avengers at a very early age. While he was dealing with bullies at his school, Billy turned to the Avengers mansion in seek of help. He briefly met his hero, the Scarlet Witch, who told him that he could take care of himself, and boy oh boy did he take care of himself. I mean, Billy chose to stand up to his bully right when his electrokinetic powers started to emerge. With powers like this, he was already set to follow in the footsteps of Doctor Strange, becoming the next Sorcerer Supreme. In the comic books at least, Kaplan and Strange meet when Doctor Strange enters a dimension wherein all past, present, and future sorcerers have gathered. Aside from that, Kaplan was a full-time superhero as part of Roberto's team of New Avengers. In at number 3, Kate Bishop. Much like how Billy Kaplan was following in the footsteps of Doctor Strange, Kate Bishop was the third character in the Marvel comic books to take on the Hawkeye mantle following Clint Barton. Allegedly, she will also be a featured character in the upcoming Disney Plus series Hawkeye, which makes perfect sense if you're priming her character to join the New Avengers. Throughout these series, it's believed that Barton will train Kate Bishop following the events of Endgame. Seeing as though he's become Ronin, this leaves the Hawkeye position wide open. Some have also speculated that Lila Barton will essentially be the new Kate Bishop, but at the end of the day, that's up to Marvel's writing team. In at number 2, Iron Lad. With the introduction of Harley Keener in Iron Man 3 and then a brief appearance at the funeral in Endgame, it's clear that they were warming audiences up for Iron Lad. Especially considering the brave sacrifice that Tony Stark made, the opening for the next Iron Man is available and the only possible prospect to fill in is Harley. Now clearly the comic books are much different different than the storyline that the MCU is putting forth, but they rarely do stuff like this for no good reason. So with that in mind and all of the advanced tech that we saw Harley working on as a kid, it's clear to see that Iron Lad will be one of the newest Avengers. Last but not least, on our number 1 spot, Shang-Chi. From the moment Shang was born, he would be raised to become a deadly assassin by his father. Even in his sleep, he would be subjected to alchemy and a virtual reality feed that taught techniques while he slept. Following the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Captain America and Iron Man were looking at expanding their team to make it bigger and stronger than ever before. This saw the addition of Shang-Chi, who was one of the first picks for this new Avengers initiative. In terms of the MCU, he is already set to star in his own solo film called Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Number 10. Agent Anti-Venom. Everybody needs a good symbiote on their team, and if I was gonna pick one of them to put on my team, I think I'd be stupid to not pick Eugene Flash Thompson's Agent Venom. He is my favorite and probably the most reliable symbiotic superhero out there. The Savage Avengers had the benefit of getting the even better Agent Anti-Venom, which is basically the same thing with upgrades. So on top of the symbiotic powers awarded by the Venom symbiote, Agent Anti-Venom was also caustic to symbiotes, to the extent that prolonged physical contact will actually kill them. His touch also kills poisons and allows Flash to purge a person's body of impurities such as toxins, and diseases. But unlike the original Anti-Venom, Flash can also heal physical injuries and doesn't have the random power negation effect. Flash's past as a soldier and boxer plus all his symbiotic enhancements make him someone you just don't want to mess with. Number 9. Damon Hellstrom. As the son of the devil, it would honestly be kind of weird if Damon Hellstrom, otherwise known as Hellstorm, didn't make this list. Damon was born when the demon Satan decided to have a child with a human woman as a way of accessing even greater power. So already we're off to a less than cheerful start. But luckily, after learning of his heritage, Hellstrom decided to turn his back on his father and vowed to fight against him, even eventually slaying his father and taking lordship over the dimension of Hell. As a ruler of a dimension of Hell and son of Satan, Hellstrom has a Cambion physiology and wields crazy magical abilities, as well as commanding vast power in his own dimension, potentially meaning he can perform any magical feat. His physiology gives him super strength and durability, and due to his dark soul, he has shape-shifting and teleportation abilities as well as magical awareness. Hellstrom has also wielded a trident made of netheranium, which is a psycho-sensitive metal found only in his extra-dimensional realm, and the weapon is a medium through which magical energies can be amplified and projected. I wish I knew more about him before making this list because he's honestly kind of really cool. Number 8. Weapon H. Clayton Cortez is actually a newer addition to the Marvel landscape, but in my opinion, he is pretty cool. Clayton was a Marine who, after defecting, was subjected to Weapon X's H Division, which was basically asking the question, what would happen if we mixed the Hulk and Wolverine and made them cyborgs? H-Alpha, which was Clayton's designation, was different though. He retained more of his brain than the other subjects, and he was also not loyal to Director Stryker's cause. So, when this guy popped out of his incubation chamber, it didn't go too well for his creators. Are we surprised though? This Hulk-Wolverine hybrid has an adamantium bonded skeleton, which still allows him to transform from human form to Hulk-out form. And yes, he has an almost limitless level of strength, and the insane level of durability afforded to the Hulk, on top of the adamantium skeleton. And we haven't even got to the adamantium bone claws and studs, regenerative healing factor, and enhanced senses. The one who created him, Dr. Alba, suggested that Weapon H could actually end the life of every living being on this earth. That's pretty insane. Number 7. Juggernaut. The stepbrother of Charles Xavier, Cain Marko, started off on the wrong foot as a bully to his brother. So he already wasn't nice when he gained the powers of irresistible force embodiment. This basically means that once Cain begins to advance in a certain direction, it is virtually impossible to halt his movement. Tons of rocks and plasma discharge cannons have slowed his pace, but they cannot completely halt him. Only a few things have ever been able to stop Juggernaut. Thor's use of his God Blast is one of them. War-Hulk with increased strength thanks to Apocalypse's grafting celestial tech to him, which allowed Hulk to increase his strength and stop the Juggernaut, is another. Cain gained this ability after bonding to the Crimson Bands of Sidorak. Sidorak being an immensely powerful entity described as both a god and a demon. The bands also granted Kane with near limitless strength and stamina and gave him the ability to summon his mystical armor at a moment's notice. When Kane was the avatar of Sidorak, these powers were boosted to even greater heights, which is just a scary thought. Number 6. Ghost Rider. If there is one thing I have learned from my time on Earth so far, it would be that you never make deals with people who look like, sound like, or call themselves the devil. There are multiple instances of this happening in the backstory of stunt motorcyclist Johnny Blaze. His mother tried to make a deal with Mephisto that would stop Johnny becoming the Spirit of Vengeance thanks to a family curse, and that didn't go as planned. And then, Johnny tried to make a deal with the same demon to save his surrogate father, which also did not go as planned and did not save him at all. Johnny was cursed with the power of the Spirit of Vengeance that inhabits his body, turning him into the Ghost Rider. While the Ghost Rider is in control, Johnny Blaze only influences its decisions to an extent as he takes the back seat, quote unquote. Doctor Strange has stated Johnny Blaze is simply a mortal and acts as a built-in safety, limiting the power of the Ghost Rider. Doctor Strange has also stated that when the demon Zarathos takes possession of the Ghost Rider's power are, for most intents and purposes, boundless and quote unquote godlike. Those powers include superhuman strength with potential limitlessness, superhuman stamina, superhuman immunity to basically all earthly physical damage, superhuman agility, regenerative healing, supernatural awareness, hellfire manipulation including infusion, projection, and constructs, firestorms, sin and soul manipulation, hell cycle symbiosis, dimensional travel, demon magic, mystical fiery chain projection, size alteration, and his key ability, the penance stare, causing any individual who stares into his eyes to see and feel every bit of pain they have ever inflicted on anyone in their entire lifetime for all eternity.
Moving on to number 5, A Fresh Start. In 2018, Marvel relaunched their comics with an event called Fresh Start. Now, Fresh Start saw the return of fan favorite characters like Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor Odinson, Bruce Banner, and Logan aka Wolverine. Many of these characters post Civil War II had either died or moved on to something else, with legacy heroes taking their place and picking up the respective mantles. This relaunch also introduced a new incarnation of the West Coast Avengers. While Hawkeye still remained their leader, the second Hawkeye, Kate Bishop, was also on the team, along with Gwenpool, America Chavez, Quentin Quire, and Kate's boyfriend Johnny Watts aka Fuse. Johnny's sister Ramona Watts would also join up with the team during the series' run, and Kate's ex-boyfriend Novar popped up as well. And of course, Gwenpool would bring Jeff the baby Landshark into the team in issue 8 after he first appeared in issue 7. And oh my god, Jeff the Landshark is like one of the greatest things ever. Another really neat aspect about the comic is that its narrative is broken up by reality television style interviews, in which we see the characters divulge to a crew various thoughts, feelings, etc. concerning the missions they go on and their interactions with other team members. It's kind of a neat twist. Moving on to number 4, Representation. The Fresh Start iteration of the West Coast Avengers are a very diverse cast, to say the least. But not just when it comes to the color of their skin. Multiple members identify as part of the queer spectrum, making it one of the biggest LGBTQ titles in Marvel's recent history. Ramon Watts, aka Alloy, is dating America Chavez. And now it seems that they aren't the token queer characters in the series because Ramon's brother, Johnny, who has been dating Kate Bishop, has declared his attraction to Novar, Kate's ex, who also declared a mutual attraction. The final issue of the series contained a few panels of the television crew interviewing Kate Bishop, Novar, and Fuse, in which both Marvel Boy and Johnny reveal that they find the other one hot. Johnny says separately in his interview about Novar, he's pretty hot though, and Novar in his says, well, she's with Johnny and I have to respect that. And I can see what she sees in him. He's hot. And then we get a panel in which Kate is being interviewed right after the crew inform her of what the two of her love interests have said, to which she responds, wait, have I ever even dated anyone straight? To which the crew responds with, nope. Moving on to number 3, US Agent. While the Avengers generally refused to tango with the government, the West Coast Avengers were always open to the outside influence. As time went on, the US government became more involved in the team, to the extent that Hawkeye was actually briefly replaced as their leader by a Steve Rogers carbon copy, US Agent. Several members of the team quit because of this, and the West Coast Avengers actually gained more enemies due to his involvement. Eventually he was booted out, thankfully, but it did cause quite the stir up for the team at the time. Moving on to number 2, Force Works. Remember how we mentioned that Avengers West Coast was cancelled in 1994? Well, this is what was created to replace it. Force Works, a ridiculously 90s series that took the remains of the West Coast Avengers team, but was led by Iron Man, who wanted to establish a team that wouldn't only fight crime, but would also prevent disasters from occurring. Tell that to his Civil War self. Scarlet Witch was the leader of the team, which consisted of War Machine, Spider-Woman, Cybermancer, US Agent, Moonraker, and Wonder Man, who was later replaced by Sentry. This team's story arcs would eventually lead into one of the worst Avengers storylines of all time, Avengers: The Crossing, in which it was revealed that Tony Stark was actually under the influence of Kang the Conqueror, but then it was revealed to actually be his future self, Immortus, in disguise. And then he was killed off altogether and replaced by a younger version of himself from an alternate reality. This then bled into Heroes Reborn, which was yet another highly disliked story arc. And finally, in at number 1, cancelled again. Clearly, cancellation is nothing new to the West Coast Avengers. The latest iteration of the West Coast Avengers, the Fresh Start Gang, were cancelled after 10 issues, ending with West Coast Avengers issue 10, much to many fans' dismay. But while the series is coming to an end, it seems as if the team will live on, guest starring in another Marvel series, Superior Spider-Man.
Number 10. Black Widow. The Avengers in the Ultimate Universe are different from their main continuity counterparts, as while the Avengers in 616 are a team of bona fide heroes brought together by massive and often global threats, the Avengers of Earth 1610 were brought together by Nick Fury and are often a team composed of former villains and kinda anti-heroes, people less marketable generally than 1610's Ultimates, which are like the equivalent to the 616's Avengers. Instead, the Avengers from 1610 end up becoming more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of reluctant participants who are forced to work together to complete missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Monica Chang, however, was not one of the more criminal-based members of the team, and instead was the new Black Widow. She was given the mantle of Black Widow after the death of Natasha, who it turned out was a traitor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ultimates, and the USA. Monica was with the Avengers team from day one, joining them on their first mission to apprehend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and locate and put a stop to the Red Skull. Monica doesn't have any superpowers, but is a trained agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is a skilled spy, combatant, and is experienced with various types of firearms, though typically is known for wielding 2 pistols. While wearing her Stark suit, she also possessed enhanced strength and speed. However, she was still a normal human, and as such was still able to be killed fairly easily when she went up against the immortal Green Goblin. Poor Monica though, I feel like that whole thing kinda did her dirty because, you know, she actually survived for a long time prior to that. So it was really weird that she was like, I'm gonna go into this fight and I'm gonna be super unprepared. Hey, then you die. That's what happens. Monica should know that. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the Maker's Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so it was lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the Spirit of Vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 8. Red Wasp. Red Wasp initially went by the name of Swarm and was a member of the antagonistic Liberators team. She was believed to have been killed in the fight between the Liberators and the Ultimates by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who became giant and stepped on Swarm. However, Petra Laskov managed to survive, saved by S.H.I.E.L.D. and put into rehabilitation by them. Rehabilitation. She was made to work for them and join up with their Avengers team. They even placed an obedience chip within her to make sure that she followed orders. Rehabilitation. During her time with S.H.I.E.L.D., Petra would take up the mantle Red Wasp. She can shrink herself down to the size of an insect and can control large swarms of insects as well. However, because of her insect-like abilities, she can also be defeated using insect repellent. So, pretty cool powers, but with a pretty big weakness. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which was what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he's really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons. Number 5. All new, all different Avengers. This was both its own new team of Avengers in a series, as well as being known as the name for kind of an entire Marvel-verse soft relaunch, including a variety of spin-offs that took place in 2015, known as the all new, all different verse. This relaunch included a variety of series, including one of my faves, All New Wolverine. But for the purpose of this list, we'll be talking about the all new, all different Avengers founding team and the individual comic series itself that was about them. Following Secret Wars, this all new, all different Avengers team was formed. Originally, it was comprised of Iron Man, Sam Wilson, who was Captain America at the time, Miss Marvel aka Kamala Khan, Miles Morales as Spider-Man, young Sam Alexander as Nova, Vision, and Jane Foster's Thor. Iron Man would act as their leader, but this team wouldn't even officially refer to themselves as Avengers until the very end of issue number 3 of their series. This was a refresh on the Avenger team, one that had no tower, no funding, and wasn't officially even recognized yet. Over time, they would become more established, but the all new, all different team would only exist as it was for 15 issues, up until the events of Civil War II. Number 4. A-Force. The first all-female team of Avengers. It took us over 50 years, but eventually we got there. This team had 2 self-titled comic series, though sadly both were very short. The team was originally led by She-Hulk, and its members would include Captain Marvel, Medusa, Singularity, Dazzler, and Nico Minoru. A-Force originally took their name from the name for the defenders of the matriarchal nation of Arcadia on Battleworld, where She-Hulk reigned as a baroness. The team was created during the Secret Wars event involving Emperor Doom's Battleworld, and would continue to exist up until the events of Civil War II, when She-Hulk was put into a coma. It's kinda how that whole thing starts. Well, it's part of the start anyways. Number 3. The US Avengers. The US Avengers is a strange and eclectic team, but also a fun and patriotic one. They worked alongside S.H.I.E.L.D., but were also considered independent of the organization. This team actually coincided with another Avenger-related one that I mentioned earlier, Avengers Idea Mechanics, the new AIM. Sunspot, who was operating under the popular alias of Citizen 5, led and created this team. It was comprised of a quirky yet popular group of heroes, including Robert Maverick's Red Hulk, Cannonball, Tony Ho's Iron Patriot, Squirrel Girl, Pod, and the time-displaced daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones from an alternate future known as Danielle Cage, aka her alternate universe's Captain America. I love Danielle Cage, she's pretty cool. Number 2. Occupy Avengers. I almost said Octopus Avengers, which is not a thing. But maybe it should be a thing, I don't know, they could be a team, they're all octopuses. This series and Avengers spin-off was a small one. It consisted mainly of Hawkeye and followed his adventures on a path for redemption following the events of Civil War II. Let's not forget that it was Hawkeye's arrow that was deemed responsible for the death of Bruce Banner, although Banner had asked that Hawkeye mercy kill him should it be necessary. Although he was acquitted of all murder charges, Hawkeye still felt guilty and sought to make things right. His way of doing this? A more grassroots approach to heroism involving basically a community outreach. Clint focused on more real-world problems that threatened people, like fixing up Santa Rosa, New Mexico's water supply. During the run of Occupy Avengers, Hawkeye would be joined by other heroes such as Red Wolf and Nightshade, who would join him on his quest. Number 1. Savage Avengers. This ruthless team of Avengers is basically one of the newest anti-hero Avenger teams to form, and is more anti-hero than our number 10 spot, the Dark Avengers, because all the members are still definitely the good guys, but are also known for being violent killers as well. This team was formed out of a team-up involving Wolverine and Conan the Barbarian. It consists of Elektra, Dr. Voodoo, formerly known as Brother Voodoo, Elektra, Punisher, and Venom. The team was assembled to combat the combined threat of spellcasters and spell traders from Conan's world and Marvel's main continuity evil secret ninja organization known as The Hand. Number 10. Agent 13. While Sharon Carter might just be your average run-of-the-mill human on paper, in reality she is anything but your run-of-the-mill human when it comes to her capabilities. When the Secret Avengers team was brought together following the disbanding of Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers and Hammer, Captain America decided not to resurrect S.H.I.E.L.D., but instead create his own sub-Avengers teams to help keep the world safe. One of these teams was the Secret Avengers, and Sharon Carter was entrusted to be his kind of co-captain for it. Sharon Carter is Agent 13. Sharon was inspired to become an agent by tales that her Aunt Peggy Carter told her of her own heroics, as well as Captain America's. She joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and is considered to be among one of their best agents, being an expert in hand-to-hand combat as well as firearms. More importantly, Sharon is also a great tactician, strategist, and leader. Number 9. Goliath. Despite the fact that he died on the team, Goliath was still a powerful member. Goliath is Bill Foster, who used to work with Dr. Hank Pym as his assistant. Being a brilliant scientist himself, Foster was able to duplicate the formula for Pym particles. Exposing himself to Pym particles, he was given the ability to alter his size, turning himself into a giant. Well, at will. He could turn himself into a giant and then shrink back down. Hence the name Goliath. Safely, Foster could grow to 25 feet in height. His increase in size also gave him a great increase in strength and somewhat in durability due to his change in mass. The formula also allows his body to change so that it can actually support the weight of his new and larger form while he is transformed. However, Goliath was vulnerable if he changed sizes multiple times in a shorter period, as it left him weakened somewhat and exhausted temporarily. It's hard on the body, basically. He died during his time serving on the Secret Avengers during the first Civil War, which was actually the first Secret Avengers team, but not the first volume of Secret Avengers, to be clear. To some, his death only strengthened their conviction for the cause, and to others it acted as a warning to basically leave the team. And gave them a signal that actually what they were doing maybe it wasn't a good idea. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn more about other sub-Avengers teams or more about the Secret Avengers, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. There's still lots of powerful members that I haven't talked about yet, so we could probably do a part 2 for this one. Number 8. Ant-Man. Ant-Man, for the purpose of this list, is actually Eric O'Grady, not Hank Pym or Scott Lang. During the Secret Avengers run that Ant-Man was a part of, the mantle was being held by Eric. If you thought Scott's past and thieving actions were questionable, Eric basically puts him to shame. Eric is probably the baddest of the Ant-Men in terms of his morals, although I think all Ant-Men have made some morally questionable choices in their life. Still, O'Grady really takes the cake overall. Eric O'Grady is more commonly known as the Irredeemable Ant-Man, which was the name of his Ant-Man series, which really gives you an idea of what type of character he is. However, Eric had decided to turn over a new leaf and really try to make a difference in the world and become a hero, which was what motivated him to accept a position on the Secret Avengers team. Although, to be clear, up to this point he was still a hero, he just was kind of like a very morally corrupt hero. He possesses the Ant-Man suit, which gives him his powers, allowing him to change size, shrinking down, and later growing in size as well. He can also communicate with and command insects. Can also, I think, do some cool energy blasty stuff. So he's pretty powerful. But still, it's Eric O'Grady. It's not like Hank Ant-Man. I think those are two different levels. Number 7. Beast. Beast is Hank McCoy, one of the original members of the X-Men and also one of the brainiest members of the Secret Avengers. He ends up being recruited for his brilliant mind, but there is a lot that Beast brings to the table when it comes to his skill and his power set. In the comics, it's also been established that he is incredibly, impossibly agile and dexterous. He also possesses superhuman strength, endurance, and durability. He has a healing factor which allows him to recover more quickly than most from injuries, and also slows his aging. His senses are heightened, and he has strong telepathic defenses which can protect him against even some of the strongest psionics in the world of Marvel. He also has a few unique powers, such as his ability to be aware of the time stream, which makes him more aware if something is altered or otherwise out of place within it. He's also believed to have some level of pheromone powers. In other words, you really shouldn't underestimate Beast. I don't say it enough, but he truly is a beast of a superhero who brings a lot to the table. I'm happy I was able to put him on this list. Do you agree that Hank should be above Ant-Man? I don't know, but I think he deserves it, you know? Not enough appreciation for Hank McCoy. Number 6. Moon Knight. Moon Knight was considered a questionable recruit to the post-Dark Reign Secret Avengers team that Cap brought together, and yet he still makes a lot of sense when you consider just how dangerous and how capable he is. Moon Knight might live with a dissociative identity disorder, but this often doesn't get in his way of completing whatever mission he is on in his own heroic life, nor does it often affect his ability to be a hero. Still, the other heroes on the team did personally question if Moon Knight was the right fit and the right pick. Moon Knight has access to amazing weapons and tech thanks to being outfitted by Stephen Grant, another prominent persona that resides in Mark Spector's psyche, who is a millionaire. He also has tons of intel, which is provided to him through one of his other personas, Jake Lockley, who's a cab driver. When it comes to his power set, he is an incredibly skilled fighter who has the favor of a god, the moon god Khonshu, on his side, and this also makes him hard to kill because usually Khonshu will just bring him back to life. He's also got enhanced strength, endurance, and agility at night, especially if it's a full moon. Moon power, baby! Get that moon power.
Number 5. Tigra. Greer Nelson was a costumed vigilante named Cat, who was enhanced by a doctor who gave her cat-like powers tied to her costume. She is later mutated into Tigra, a human-tiger hybrid created through a mystical ritual. Her feline physiology grants her a number of superhuman capabilities. In addition to the usual super strength and stuff, she has superhuman senses and a regenerative healing factor. Her teeth and claws are razor sharp and capable of cutting through bone, stone, and even some metals. She wears a cat's head amulet as a talisman for her so she can change back and forth between her feline form. She became a part of the Avengers in issue number 211 and proved herself in battle against the Molecule Man. She eventually moves to San Francisco and becomes friends with Spider-Woman. She also helped out at Avengers Academy after the fall of Norman Osborn. Number 4. Falcon. Also known as Samuel Wilson, Falcon grew up in a tough Harlem neighborhood, and his father was killed trying to stop a fight. His mother later died protecting her children from a mugging, and Sam eventually gets involved with the mob at one point, seeming like he would never become a hero. Red Skull uses the Cosmic Cube to give Sam the ability to telepathically speak with birds, especially a falcon that Wilson names Redwing. He is sent to take on Captain America, but Cap frees Wilson from Red Skull's control, and as Falcon, he becomes Cap's partner, and the two work together for a long time. Black Panther also helps out Falcon by helping to create his harness that allows him to fly. He joins the Avengers between issue 184 and 194, but finds out that he's just been drafted to fill a quota, and resentful of being a token, he quits as soon as he can. Number 3. Firebird. First appearing in Incredible Hulk number 265 in 1981, Bonita Juarez was walking across the desert of New Mexico when a huge ball of fire crashed down into the sand just 10 feet from where she stood. Bathed in extraterrestrial radiation, she later discovers she received fire-based superpowers. She believed the fireball was a manifestation of the American Indian legend of the Firebird, and so makes herself a costume and decides to become a hero with the name Firebird. She helped out the West Coast Avengers in a battle against Master Pandemonium, and later was recruited onto the Avengers during a spiritual journey during which she was going by the name La Espirita. She discovers that her powers were actually from an alien child's failed experiment and not an act of God, and after a brief crisis of faith, returns to the name Firebird. Her and the Rangers worked alongside Kane in Scarlet Spider Volume 2, helping him to battle against a monster made of pure energy. Number 2. Stingray. Walter Newell was an oceanographer and engineer supervising the construction of an underwater city. He designed a unique suit for deep sea exploration, basing the design on manta rays and taking up the name Stingray. He was ordered to investigate Namor, but believed him to be innocent and later allows him to escape. In Avengers Volume 3, he was one of the many heroes who responded to the rallying call, but chose not to remain an Avenger full-time. He later becomes a fully active member of the Avengers when Kang the Conqueror begins to strike all around the Earth. He helped to enlist the help of the Atlanteans in the fight on the waterfront, and was a great asset thanks to his nautical experience. He ultimately leaves the Avengers, but remains a reserve member and still responds to emergency calls. Number 1. Demolition Man. Similar to Justice, D-Man was also once a wrestler in the Unlimited Class Wrestling Federation. Born Dennis Dunphy, he was raised in Detroit and idolized superheroes as a boy. A college football player, hoping to one day be drafted, he accepts an offer from the power broker, hoping he'll get the power he needs to become a professional football player. Unfortunately, he winds up too powerful to safely compete with normal athletes, so the power broker sets him up as a wrestler. After Captain America takes an interest in the power broker, Dennis allies with him. Later, he joins the Avengers informally. He designed and built his own costume, based on Wolverine and Daredevil suits, and he nearly dies in a plane crash, joins the US Army, and at one point joins Wonder Man's Revengers, dedicated to dismantling the Avengers. He even becomes bonded with a symbiote at one point, and is later turned into a vampire to save his life after he becomes mortally wounded.